Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Afoma Omesi. I run the website Reading Middle Grade, which is dedicated to championing the best middle grade books for kids ages 8 to 14. Today, I'm going to be talking about historical fiction. I have some great recommendations here today, and I would love to share them with you. I fell in love with historical fiction only this year. I used to see it as a genre that I just had to read for the sake of reading. It was never something enjoyable for me. I would like the history elements, but I just found it really difficult and hard to slog through, with only very few favorites throughout the years. But this year, I made a commitment to really open myself up to the genre and experiment with different kinds of formats, verse novels, graphic novels, and I really found myself falling in love with it. I also discovered some great historical fiction titles, a few of which I'm sharing with you today. Starting things off is Orphan Island. This is by Gennifer Choldenko. You might know her as the author of Al Capone Does My Shirts. She also has a fantastic new realistic fiction title called The 10th Mistake of Hank Hooperman, which came out this year in 2024. I loved that book, but today we're going to talk about Orphan Island, her historical fiction title that kind of flew under the radar in 2020, I think. This book is about 4 orphans who escape from the home for friendless children. It's a dreadful orphanage, and they decide that they're going to get away from that place. So when they escape, they end up at a circus. So there's 4 of them, and this story is mostly about Lucy, the redhead that you see here. Lucy has selective mutism, which means that she doesn't speak most of the time, even though she has the ability to speak. So in this story, there's a mystery of why does Lucy not speak, what happened to her? And there's also another mystery because Lucy doesn't know this, but her elder sister is looking for her and is going to try to make her way to her by the end of this book. Most of the book is set in the circus, and this book is set in 1939. So there's a lot of descriptions about the circus, the animals, how things are done there. And Lucy, in order to get a place at the circus, needs to use her voice. This book is about friendship. It's about found family. It's about injustice. And I like to think of it as The Greatest Showman meets A Place to Hang the Moon. As a fan of that movie and that book, I think this is just a gem waiting to be discovered. It reads aloud beautifully, although I hate how tiny the font is in this one, but I did listen to the audiobook, which I loved and would highly recommend. So if you have kids who love historical fiction, this is a great pick for grades 4 and up. I think 9-year-olds and up will be able to appreciate the story and the mystery better than younger kids would. Next up is Safiyyah's War. This is by Hiba Noor, and I actually got this when I was in London earlier this year because it had not yet released in the United States, but it's now out. It came out in May, and it is fantastic. The writing is so gorgeous, and I know people usually say that about books that are so lyrical and hard to get through, but that's not the case in this one. It's really accessibly written, but it just reads so beautifully, which is why I think it would also be a really good read aloud pick, although for slightly older kids, maybe the 5th grade and up. It's about the lesser-known history of how Muslims helped Jews escape in 1940s Paris during the Second World War. Safiyyah and her family, they live in Paris. They're immigrants, they're living in Paris until the World War II starts. And then she starts to realize that something's up with her dad and there's something going on that she's not aware of. And that's how she gets into this whole process of helping Jews get smuggled out of the country. It was very eye-opening in terms of the historical perspective, but also just such a moving story of family, of being brave and showing courage. If you're looking for a book that touches on those themes, this is a fantastic one to look into. If you have kids who love Number the Stars, I feel like this is a similar kind of plot, although much richer in terms of detail and setting and all of those things. I loved this book. It was on this year's summer reading guide, and if you haven't checked that out already, I'm going to add a link so you can check it out. But I loved this one and would highly recommend it. My next pick is also set during World War II, but it's a different kind of story, which I love. I love different perspectives, and this one really, really nails that. This is also a verse novel, so you'll see the way it's written, and it's written from 2 perspectives. So it's written from the perspective of Claire, an American girl in the 1940s at the start of World War II. Her brother is off to fight in the war. And then her father and some other farmers, apple orchard farmers at the time, get some prisoners of war, including a young man named Carl. Carl has been taught all kinds of things by the Hitler Youth Army about Americans and the lesser race and all of those other propaganda. And he's trying to unlearn all of those things, especially since he's getting to know Americans for who they are, spend time with them. He's seeing that they're not so much what he thought they would be. And so Claire and Carl, they form a tentative friendship despite their differences, despite the resentment and the bad blood between both of their countries. They have this relationship, and that's all I'm going to say about this book, because it has so many surprising twists and turns, and it's just wonderful to read. It is a bit of a tearjerker, but I loved it, and I was very surprised by it. It actually made my top 10 list of audiobooks from last year. So I'm going to add that list in the description as well, so you can check it out. But this is wonderful. I would recommend this for at least 6th graders and up. I think an older middle grade audience would love it and appreciate it. Even your 8th graders would be all over this story. And they'll be back. They'll be back after reading it to gasp in your face, because there's a huge twist at the end, and I loved this one. Next up is Bee and the New Deal Horse. This is a very sweet historical fiction middle grade title. It's about a girl, Bee, and her sister, who are abandoned by their father during the Great Depression because he has no more funds to look after them. They're left in a family friend's farm, and eventually Bee goes up to the lady and says, "Hey, I'm going to work on your farm just so you can keep my sister and I here." It's also a wonderful tale of found family. But there's the element of the horse, because then Bee discovers that there's a horse on the farm and she has to show her riding skills. And eventually she might be the key to helping the woman keep the farm. This is rich, and I mean rich in historical detail. There's so much information about what was happening in the 1930s, from protests by veterans to Roosevelt's New Deal for America. This makes this book a brilliant, brilliant book to teach. And I have a discussion guide on my blog, in my shop, to help you teach this book, full of vocabulary words, extension activities, and all of that. But this is just a wonderful, wonderful book to read, with the historical element, the sibling relationship, also bravery, courage, connection with an animal, learning to accept help from other people. And this one is really good for grades 5 and up. Although 4th graders can read it, but I think grade 5 is really that sweet spot. I love the way this book is written, with lots of white space on it, despite the fact that it is a bit of a chunkier read. So it makes it highly accessible, and even for younger readers, not intimidating at all. The final book on my list is one you've probably heard about, because it was actually a National Book Award finalist last year. It's called The Lost Year by Katherine Marsh. Again, this tells an untold or lesser known story of the Ukrainian Holodomor, or Ukrainian famine. And I'd never heard of this before. And it was particularly touching for me because I spent 3 years in Ukraine as a medical student. So reading this book broke my heart. Very, very touching, and just like shocking to hear of the horrifying things that happened during that time. It's told from 3 different perspectives. You get to see different perspectives of this story. It's also fantastic on audio. The voices are really good. The narrators do a wonderful job. And this is one of those books that has a shocking twist as well. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. I highly recommend it. This is great for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And I think it's a story that really moves both kids and adults alike. If you haven't read this one yet, definitely put it on your TBR. Do not miss it. These 5 books honestly made me love historical fiction. I have some other favorites, which I'm going to link to in the description below in my blog post about historical fiction titles. And amazingly, I've also categorized all of these books by time period. So if you're looking for stories set in a particular era, you'll be seeing those on my website. So I hope you give that a look. And I would love to know from you, what are your favorite middle grade historical fiction titles? share them with me. I'm always looking for more options to add to my TBR. And if you've read any and you would love to hear my thoughts on it, feel free to pop their title in the description. And if I've read them, I'll let you know what I thought about it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. And see you very soon. Bye.